we were speaking this morning about what meditation is. And as I said that to me it was about cleaning the mind. But again, that needs qualification, describing what is that, what is that all about. And you're saying that it's simply a kind of relaxation.
Calming
So
yourself.
calming down.
Yeah. Calming the mind. Like in broadest term, if somebody who doesn't know what meditation is, has no notion of any techniques, anything, if they were to ask, what is meditation? Like, to convey them, without going technical or something, just, it's a way of calming your mind. So when the mind needs calming, you calm it down.
So if I'm agitated, anyone can, most people can get agitated, and you need to calm down. What do you do?
That's kind of the whole point, because learning how to calm your mind down skillfully without involving sensuality or distraction, that's the wisdom, that's the work, that's the value of it. So most people would just calm their mind by the means of sensuality, by the means of seeking pleasure. And that's what the Buddha said in the suttas. When touched by unpleasant feeling, an untrained mind, the only escape that they know from that pain is sensual pleasure. So they would seek sensuality to pretty much pacify their mind, so the mind calms down in regard to something else that bothers them. So in other words, you're pretty much just replacing, covering up, pasting a cover on the wound that you don't want to deal with. Just some nice cooling patch or something, but underneath it's still the same wound. So that's the difference between doing meditation for the right reason and doing meditation for the wrong reason. Like, are you doing meditation just to get away from stuff, to not deal with the things, or to just calm your mind in regard to things that are still there, that are otherwise agitating you?
Or am I trying to replace the pain?
Exactly. Am I trying to basically avoid the pain? Or am I trying to calm my mind in regard to the pain and not try to get rid of it? That's the fundamental difference there. And that's why it's important, what view person carries in regard to meditation. See, most of the contemporary meditation notions, even if people have genuine reasons, when you say meditation, it's immediate kind of implication of a special, super pleasant experience that you get if you do a technique, if you're committed to it. This pleasure overwhelms you and you had a very successful meditation. But that's not necessarily calming to begin with. And second, it's kind of exactly the same principle as sensuality is. I'm bothered by things, let me do some work, let me earn, let me gain, so that I can enjoy this vast amount of pleasures that will calm me down and make me very satisfied. So sometimes people realize that sensuality will not necessarily provide that, or cannot, then they turn to meditation, but they don't change the attitude. So there's the whole idea of jhanas being this pleasure that overwhelms you and it's ecstatic and you can't even have enough of it and stuff. It's a complete just the replacement of same views of sensuality, just replacing the objects that you usually chase. Because that's what's on people's mind, that expectation of, I'm doing this, when will this pleasure overwhelm me? When will it happen? And would you consider yourself calming yourself down if you're cultivating expectations? Is expecting things, is that a calming state of mind? Anticipation, is that a calming quality? No, not at all. And how many people can say they can truly meditate without the slightest view of anticipation? Contemporarily, when they come across meditation, Buddhist or otherwise, it's implicit. What's happening looking what's happening so that you can interpret what's happening, waiting for things to happen, hoping they will happen. Again, meditating with sensuality. Waiting for things to happen, they will be pleasant, they will solve everything else out. No. You read the suttas, samatha, it's calming your mind. Not getting rid of things that disturb the mind. Well, getting rid of things that disturb the mind through restraint. But then when the mind is agitated on its own account of ignorance, on account of not having not uprooted greed, aversion, distraction, you can't just get those things out of your mind, because that's what your mind is. So then you need to learn, as we said before, how to calm yourself down within that endurance. But you will never begin going in that right direction of calming for as long as you don't relinquish your views of meditation bringing this pleasure.
It's meditation, almost like ignoring of what the mind is. You're trying
yeah, exactly. You're just trying to get a pleasant experience instead of this unpleasant experience. That's exactly the Puthujana's way. When touched by pain, the only escape he knows is seeking pleasure. It doesn't matter whether he seeks pleasure through food, company, others, or meditation. He seeks pleasure because he doesn't want to deal with pain. And that's why it's a central view that underlines that meditation, any meditation of that kind.
So yeah, it reminds me that Kanti Paramang is the highest austerity, the patient endurance is the highest practice, the highest meditation.
That's the meditation. Yeah.
That's the.
So it's not about replacing the experience that has arisen. It's about thoroughly knowing it while it's there. But the point will come where in order to fully understand it, you need to learn how to stay calm within it. And that's the role of the proper samadhi. That's why the right view is the necessary basis for the right samadhi. Because the right view will know that. Will know it's about enduring disorder. Mind is disturbed because the mind is not free. But if I just seek to replace it with pleasurable experience, I haven't understood what needs to be understood. So what if I instead seek to calm it within the disturbing experience, within the agitated mind? I learn how to calm myself within that. And then the agitation disappears, and that which agitated, you're still there, and you get to understand it now, because the mind sees clearly when it's calm. And that's the pleasure that Buddha talks about, the pleasure that's different than the pleasure of sensuality. The pleasure of not being bothered, pleasure of being withdrawn, pleasure of sense restraint.
It's a pleasure that you cultivate.
Well, pretty much, yeah. It's a pleasure that you cannot crave for more, because it didn't come in that external sense of just a replacement, just something that overwhelms you. So, and even the pleasure of jhana, it's the pleasure of that withdrawal from beforehand. That's what the pleasure belongs to, not to the jhana. Having been secluded, he experienced the pleasure of seclusion. And then his mind becomes confident in that, and then he basically is abiding in jhana as a result of that seclusion and non-activity that we spoke before. Because that's truly what is disturbing. It's the movements of the mind. You can't calm it. So you seeking pleasure is just another movement. That's a fundamental, exactly, another expectation, another anticipation. Even if you get it, if you don't get it, doesn't matter. You are still relying on the perpetual movement of the mind to remain floating, so to speak. And that's not peaceful. That's not calming, even if you get all the pleasure you want in the world. So the true samatha then is calming of those movements, of those activities, those sankharas, intentions of the mind. Calming that within whatever you're intending towards or against. But in order to calm your intentions on the mental level, you need to have calmed your body, you need to have calmed your speech, you need to have restrained it sufficiently long before. That's where jhana begins with you keeping the virtue pretty much. That's already calming. Stilling of the activities, as the Buddha would say, stilling of the sankharas. There's nothing magical about it. It's just there is intention to move, you don't necessarily move through that intention. You see where it's rooted. Is it intention rooted in agitation? Then you endure it. Then you try to not get rid of the agitation, but remove intention to move in the face of agitation. But that's quite subtle already. But if somebody has been thoroughly withdrawn, physically, verbally, not delighting in company, living in seclusion, that would be a very visible thing. You see why you suffer, not because there is the disturbing thought, it's because the mind feels confined by it and wants to get rid of it. And that's the root of suffering. That movements of that craving, not what has arisen. But you need to have been thoroughly restrained and withdrawn, and then you can actually even start calming that movement of the mind. Not at the expense of what is agitating you. That remains. That actually serves almost as a criteria whether you're calm now or not. Because it's easy to be calm when there's nothing bothering you. But why do people don't want to live in seclusion, not partake in company, not practice sense restraining, guard the sense doors? Because it's very disturbing. You start saying no to sensuality, guarding the sense doors, avoiding company, living alone. It's very disturbing for the mind.
Because it's used to that.
Well, exactly, because it depends on the movements, yeah. That's the life is defined by the movements, by activities, by engagements, by intentions.
When you sit still, so to speak, mentally, you try to calm down. You sit still.
You sit still.
You then are faced, or you're faced with that whole flow of where the direction that mind's going.
Yeah, sure.
You feel the pressure of its direction that
so
it runs.
you want to sit still. You want to feel the pressure, but then you don't want to distract yourself from that mental side of it. So then you realize, you can walk up and down, you can move around, but none of the bodily actions should be rooted in that agitation that you want to get rid of. So if you're just pacing up and down, it's not really the activity that's connected to the activity of the mind that wants to avoid things that are agitating it. That's why the gradual training is about building that up, because that is the most disturbing thing. Solitude, seclusion, withdrawal from the senses, confinement. It basically feels like dying. Feels like withdrawal of a heavy addict who's been depending on the senses for eons, not just in this life. So, and that's why it's not optional, really. It's just more like whether you're gonna take it seriously and work towards it, or you're gonna develop the view that will kind of convince you that you're exempted from it, because you can just sit in your room for half an hour, go into some state of concentration and think you're somehow doing the work by being unaware. No. That's why gradual training naturally results in jhana. Restrained by the virtue, moderate in eating, watchful, wakeful, guarding the sense doors, minds withdrawn and withdrawn and withdrawn, seclusion, and then he enters and lives in the first jhana, which is basically learning how to live apart from the dependence on the pleasure of the senses. And for that you need to have been withdrawn sufficiently.
Because an addict who's trying to give up whatever, cigarettes, then you go through these withdrawal symptoms, but difficult, whatever, a week, a month, whatever it is, you're agitated and so on, and then you're okay. But sometimes people try to replace that with something else.
Sure. Well, because it's a relative addiction, but we're not talking about one particular thing that you're addicted through your senses. We're talking about the whole senses.
Yeah. So
if you think cigarettes are hard to give up, or heroin, well, you'll see if you try giving up the actual pleasure dependent on the senses and existence in general. Yeah. But that is the way out. That is the way out. That's why it is the way out.
But just on that small little,
you get a glimpse, sure.
A glimpse of, I'm now not agitated by being withdrawn from this.
So you can imagine then the pleasure even of the first jhana, when you're not drawn by anything in the world.
You're no longer addicted by the sense.
No addiction. No, you are completely dry off it. And even if you have the thoughts, they are not sensual thoughts like before. The ones that would immediately pressure you. And that's a true release, laying down of the burden. But there is no magical way. Watch your left nostril, watch your right, 3 steps left, turn around, do this, do that. No. The withdrawal from that which you're addicted to. That is the magical way. And you need to be withdrawn sufficient. How long? Well, that depends how strong your addiction was. Again, every time. What is the meditation that the Lord praises, the Buddha praises? Well, it's this meditation. Here I say, come bhikkhu, well restrained with patimokkha. Be moderate in eating. Be watchful. Guard your sense doors, bhikkhu. Live in seclusion. Don't engage in company. And you'll enter and abide in the first jhana. That's the meditation that Lord approves. That's it. That's the technique. Technique of basically overcoming the addiction of the addictions, the addiction of the senses. Without replacements. And by the way, yeah, that's how people can replace it. Through strong determination, committing to something else, committing to even more activity, constant work, perpetual distraction, company, can keep you like your mind away from seeking coarse sensuality. But you're not uprooting anything. That's just like a heroin addict finding something else to keep his mind addicted to. That's not dealing with it.
It's not free from addiction.
No, because the moment those activities become unavailable, his resting spot of his mind is where his addiction still is. So he'll go back to that which he hasn't uprooted. So that's what meditation is. Once you have basically sufficiently wholesomely disturbed your mind by unwavering sense restraint and guarding of the sense doors, seclusion, now you learn how to calm within that. Not abandon it, but calm. Still the agitation aspect of it. So that you can carry on, because you're realizing already that that's the way out.
But how do you still the agitated aspect?
Well, if I tell you how to do it, there will be another activity you're going to do.
Yeah.
So the only way to do it is to endure it. And through that endurance, when you have no room to move left, right, forward or backward, you will find a way how to calm yourself down. And how would that be? By not moving left, right, forward or backward.
Yeah.
That's what you should do. How did Master Gotama cross the shore then? By not fighting the waves, by not pulling backward, by not standing still. That's what I did. So if you're pushing forward, don't. Pulling backward, don't. Standing still, don't. But those activities, movements, will become apparent if you have been sufficiently restrained and lived withdrawn. And that's also why often in this, I mean, I said it many times probably, but it's not, you can't accidentally become enlightened. Who will accidentally become free from addiction through enduring the pain of withdrawal for 6 months without a reason, without a determined goal to go through that? Who would accidentally just choose to do that perpetually for so long that they actually become free? No, there has to be some knowledge, some will behind to commit to that training, to see some benefit in it.
Peace, nibbana.
Exactly.
Even just that idea of ultimate,
yeah,
the ultimate thing, the highest thing that I attain is that complete peace.
Yeah. And that's why people, when they did, people that were not restrained or interested in practice, they encountered the Buddha and they insisted to know what he's teaching. And when he would describe the Nibbana to them, they would be shocked and say, well, that's death. That will kill me.
Yeah, relinquishment of what I am.
Yeah, that will kill me, that will destroy what I am. Because it will. Because whatever people are is what is based on the senses and sense pleasures.
Yeah, that's what we said in the past. Why is it difficult to give up cigarettes? Because that is
your whole world.
Your world.
Yeah.
That you are.
Yeah.
So it would be like dying.
And again, cigarettes, heroin, alcohol, all of those are particular addiction within sensuality.
Yeah.
Now you're giving up basically pleasure of the senses, pleasure of the activity through the senses. So the only way to do that successfully is gradual training. Have a wide base of unshakable virtue, wide base of sense restraint, moderation in eating, watchfulness, wide base of guarding the sense doors. So then, all the struggle that your mind will go through for withdrawals, you can come within that without sort of falling off that base.
There's a boundary there that you can...
Yeah, that's why I said, it's actually from the point of view of developing your mind, it's better, because people sometimes ask, oh, well, okay, I understand, I want to meditate, but I understand I have to keep the precepts in order to meditate. Again, first, well, why do you want to meditate specifically? You're saying as meditation itself is a goal. Well, you're still seeking pleasure. But then second, okay, so you want to keep the precepts, so do I keep 5 or 8 or what, when, how long? It's actually better if, shall I keep 8 precepts, once a week or something? It's better to keep the 5 precepts, but once you take them for the rest of your life. Not for 2 days, 5 days. That becomes that wide base I'm talking about. Has to be done in that sense. A heroin addict will not free himself if he goes to rehab only on the weekends. And then he's back to the world. It's just silly. So, take on the 5 precepts forever. That already is going to bring confinement for a mind of addiction, of sensuality.
Rehab forever.
That's already, okay. And that's the weight you need to start taking on in that gradual training. That's the whole point. Like even when Arupa Sampada, when the chanters recite the 4 parajikas, 4 grave offenses, if you commit, you're not amongst and then he says what those things are. It's not to be done for the rest of your life by you. It's just not like it has to be taken in the ultimate sense. So it's better to even take like just 5 precepts, but in an ultimate sense. And that's what all the lay followers in the suttas did. I go to the refuge for the rest of my life. Let Buddha know me as a lay follower. Means this now is the basis of that sense restraint confinement, the 5 precepts, which is very easy. It's not even confining. So, but as I said, take that in the ultimate sense, and then on top of that, if sometimes you want to keep the 8 precepts, yes, but when you don't keep the 8 precepts, there is no falling lower than the 5 precepts. That is your basis. That must remain your basis. And then if you really feel, no, I do really want to free myself once and for all, or at least make an attempt for it, then you take the 8 precepts for the rest of your life. You take up that basis in the ultimate sense of 8 precepts. That's it. Through that, because now that's something you must protect. You're forced to be mindful. You're forced to be moderate and not overdo things. They will make you spill out and break the precepts. You are forced to watch your senses, guard them, because if you don't, it becomes very unpleasant within the confinement of the 8 precepts and the mind that wants to do that which is outside of the 8 precepts. And that's how you start taming it. And all the similes in the suttas. Get a wild elephant from the forest, from the jungle where he was just roaming around. Strap it down with big, peg and leather straps, and then wait for it to calm down, because it's just gonna. When it comes down, then loosen up a bit, move it left, move it right, poke it, train it, feed it, until it starts to accept it, and that's the mind. It's not to do what you feel like. No, you are going against the entire grain of samsara, of existence. You're not just seeking one pleasant experience to replace the other one. You're uprooting all of it. So, that's meditation. Calming amidst that.
Withdrawal, calming.
Well, withdrawal, the wild mind still kicks and screams. You're calming it without abandoning withdrawal. Without giving in to the senses. Without letting the elephant go back to the jungle to appease itself, to have a break. No. There is no going back. Non-returning. Exactly one who abandons sensuality is not coming back to this world. Impossible. For that very reason. He has abandoned dependence on anything from this world. It's not a poetic name of non-returning. Factual.
He's never returning to any of the previous addictions.
He won't be returning. No, he cannot. He's been abandoned.
No matter what happens.
No matter what happens. Inconceivable. Like a stone split in half, cannot be joined together. was a dry leaf cannot become green again. Yeah, just irreversible. If you accomplish the grain against the samsara, it's irreversible. You cannot go back down, and impossible. That's why free mind is known as, it's free.
It's like an addict, an alcoholic would be like not drinking for 10 years, but can they still go back?
Well, yeah, because they haven't uprooted the sensuality.
Yeah, they're not non-returners.
No.
Exactly,
No.
in that sense. They kind of...
But in a way, yeah, like many of them would not. Like, I think even in that sense, you can get a glimpse, because once you, like with cigarettes, for example, you free yourself from that addiction, and you go back to cigarettes, and it's sickening.
Right.
So it will take work now to work through to become addicted again, and it's kind of impossible for you to go through that work carelessly, knowing what you've been through, when you truly freed yourself from the addiction of it.
And there's nothing that it actually offers you.
No,
That you...
no. It was a simple carelessness and dependence on pleasure, unchecked dependence on pleasure, that people become addicted to stuff. So, but having fully approved the sensuality, fully understood the extent of the danger of it, it's just impossible for mind to even entertain that as a possibility anymore. Literally, that elephant you dragged out of the forest to tame it has finally understood, seen for himself. You don't need to tell it anymore the peril of going back there, and then you can unhook it. You can remove all the straps. It will not go back there, because it was actually unpleasant, always was. And again, that's what the Buddha described for sensuality. It's like the leper burning with embers, finding pleasure in burning his wounds.
Mm-hmm. It was always...
But all of it is painful, yeah. But because of his condition, that burning relieves him of the pain of his wounds, so it feels pleasant. But burning of the embers in itself, it always was unpleasant. So it's only relatively pleasant, sensuality, because of your mental condition, addiction, dependence, scratching the itch. So once the leper is free from that skin condition, would he even consider burning himself again? It caused immense pain, just unbearable pain, because the reason that was providing that relative pleasure is gone. So it just becomes inconceivable for him to do that.
A madness.
Yeah.
So you see that it's a madness.
Yeah, absolute illness. Yeah.